I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. I think the explanation that the Attorney General has given on the classification of offences is good enough for me, and I rest my case there. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to move a motion that regarding parts 2 or clause 2C, especially on specified agencies, that the Ministry of Itaukei Affairs be also included as one of the specified agencies here, sir.
No, PM, you should not do this. PM, you can't have Itaukei Affairs because that's an administrative body.
Can I
All these
speak on it,
agencies are like Commissioner of Prisons, Fiji Police.
Whilst this is being carried out, think about what you wish to take. We'll have this, we'll have a seconder, we'll discuss it, then we'll move on.
Honourable Chair, I second the motion.
I haven't read the motion yet. I want to see what the motion is exactly. Specified agencies. Okay. Is there a seconder?
Honourable Chair, I second the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, sir. I'd like to speak on the motion as put forward, and that the Ministry of Fijian Affairs be specifically Itaukei Affairs, sorry, be included in these agencies that we have here, sir. This is because most of these offenders, sir, once they are registered, most of them live in the villages. Villages are under native reserve. And a good example is in my case, in wearing the traditional hat. I've been visited by social welfare officers and the prisons officers as well, regarding certain individuals that have continued to exercise their rights since they are registered in the Kambula to live and reside in the village. But in view of the offences that has been registered against them, I personally would like to see that when I call a village meeting, that the respective heads of the Matangali be fully accountable to the village and then to the government as a whole on the role that they play to ensure that the sexual offender living amongst us is taken care of by the very Matangale that he belongs to. At one point, Mr. Speaker, sir, I was asked if he could be booted out from the village, this offender. But again, I was caught in between because of his rights as well. As a member of the village registered in the Kambula, they are domiciled in the same village as I. So that is simply the explanation I'm putting forward. It's quite important that this agency, Itaukei Affairs, be held responsible here, because that is part of their role as well, to ensure that all the villages abide by whatever law is in place. Because most of the time, government officials, when they come, they observe protocol. And instead of going straight to the individuals, they go straight to the heads of the village and the Matangali and down. But we are a bit handicapped here, given the status as is, in part 2 of the proposed bill, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Any further comments on this amendment? Yes, Honourable Wong.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Chair. I agree with the Leader of the Opposition on the proposal that we include the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs in the list of authorized specified agencies as outlined in this section of the bill. This bill needs to be passed, but a lot of me personally, I'm conflicted about this because it's something that is new, a phenomenon that will be new in the village setting, but also recognizing that the time for it has come, given the sorry record in the country of the extent of offenses like this in our community. It will take quite a bit of work for our people to understand the seriousness of this, and that we need to register the offenders in the manner that has been prescribed in the bill. As one of my colleagues has been alluding to, there are now many contributing factors. We have moved a motion that's to try and put some control on pornographic websites and the like in this country, but it was defeated. All these are contributing factors, and our people are migrating to the towns and cities these days. The traditional setting, the rules no longer apply to them in the way it used to be in the past. Because we were sharing today with our caucus, and I remember there was a time back in the villages when it was known within the village that such and such a person has something, and that we need to be careful of that person. It was just a traditional way of monitoring offenders. But times have changed. Social media is now here. The phones. Anyone can access some pretty explicit stuff in the phones these days, and we need to do this. We, on this side of the House, decided this morning that we will vote on this on our conscience. There is no party position. The Leader of the Opposition has agreed with that. So, with me personally, I'm conflicted, but I do understand that the time has come that we do something like this, given the way Fiji and the world is moving. But I believe at the Vanua level, we need this to be handled in the traditional way. We have the traditional structure, the provincial office, the Tikina Council, and the village. So I totally agree with the motion here that we include the iTaukei, Ministry of iTaukei Affairs as one of the agencies to be added to the list that we have here today, Honourable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Honourable Tanya Wanganeka, do you wish to participate in this?
Honourable Chair, just in regards to the definition of sexual offender in Part 1, which also...
No, we're on this amendment. On this amendment.
My concern is... I apologize.
Honourable Ratu Naiqama.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion. We have such people living in the village who are known to the villagers. And I would think that it should also be included in this list, in part in number 2. These people belong to different Matangalis, as has been pointed out by the Leader of Opposition. I also think that some authority should be given to the Turani Koro and maybe the Nasini Koro as well, because of the high unemployment in the villages. People are moving around at will, and with extended holidays, children are everywhere. With very little supervision, and such people just find the opportunity. They know the habits of these children, so they're on the lookout and find an opportunity to take them aside, and it could be just for 1 or 2 minutes. So I would suggest, Chair, that the Turani Koro and Nasini Koro also be given some authority, not heavy-handed, Honorable Minister, to be made aware that these perpetrators, that people are keeping an eye on them, because they're very smart in the way they operate. The high incidence of these sex offenders, especially on children. So I agree with that. I support that motion, Honorable Chair. And with pornography, many children also have these smartphones. They could be using it for their classes, but it's so easy for them to go from there to the porn sites, and if they are not supervised, that is leading to what we are looking at in this particular bill that's before us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Attorney General, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. So if we can just look at the definition of specified agency, if you look at it's the Fiji Police Force, Fiji Correction Service, Office of the DPP, FRCS at the border, Ministry responsible for justice, Ministry responsible for education, Ministry responsible for children, Ministry responsible for defense and national security, Ministry responsible for health and medical services, Department responsible for immigration, Department responsible for social welfare, or any public agency that the Minister declares is a specified agency by notice in the Gazette. If you look at the rationale of all of these agencies, these are essentially law enforcement agencies or related to specific areas of employment where there will be high exposure to children. Welfare, education, health, of course defense for national security purposes. You have also justice, FRCS at the border, because as you know we've got a definition of sex offenders coming into the country, coming in and out of the country, because now we want to work with other international, our counterparts, Australia, New Zealand, USA, whatever it may be, so we share that type of information. So please understand that. Now in all of this, we have also tried to navigate our way through balancing the rights of these offenders also. We have to balance their rights. And I think Honorable Naiqama in fact kind of alluded to that. You know, what if it's only a repeat person? Of course, you can have one incident. We've seen incidents where a person violently rapes a young boy. And it may be a one-off, but that one-off incident completely psychologically damages that boy. I can tell you one story of a person who's currently in prison, a young boy who was actually raped a number of times when he was very young. He then, at the age of 13 or 14, violently and anally raped a girl and killed her. He's still today in prison. It's been over 20 years. Because of the psychological impact of what had happened to him. You can have one impact that can be very detrimental. But on the other hand, you could have one person who may have committed an offense, could have reformed. Yes, the name will be on the register. Yes, he may, generally it's a he, generally he may now have, for example, found employment somewhere else. But he may not come and work in these areas that areas of employment. By making this information available to an agency that is, in fact, does not specialize in the area of law or welfare education, you are leaving this person's name vulnerable. They perform an administrative role, Ministry of iTaukei Affairs, fundamentally. Yeah. If you're going to give it to all and sundry, can you imagine the impact on this person? He may have reformed himself. He may go back to his landowning unit and want to build his house and start off his new life. But if you're going to give his name to all and sundry in the village, imagine the ramifications on him. He may have already paid for his crimes. So you see, this is not an easy thing. It is a balancing act. We have to give people the ability to reform, but we also have to be able to, look after the rights and welfare of our children. As, data has shown over a period of time, there are a number of people who have a propensity of, once they do it again. Some people may not do it again. So whenever you look at individual rights versus group rights, so to speak, we need to ensure that we err on the side of protecting the individual, balancing his or her rights. So I would urge the honourable members of the opposition, please try and understand this. It's not an easy thing. You may actually be ostracizing somebody completely. And by giving it to all and sundry, the village nurse and everybody in the village, you're actually, not allowing perhaps this person to reform. You're also, in a way, eroding his rights. So the agencies that actually have this, they have particular SOPs in place. And please, if you look at, I refer you in that respect to section 27, although it's related, Mr. Chair, sir, although it's in part 3, but the Commissioner will actually issue guidelines in relation to access to information in the register to ensure persons authorized by the Commissioner can access information in the register for the following purposes: to prevent, detect, investigate, prosecute sexual offences, to monitor sex offenders in the community, and the purpose specified in 28. So we have various safeguards built around it. And that's critically important. So I would please urge the Honourable Leader of Opposition, please look at it from the other perspective too. We need to be able to bring people along with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any further member wishing to take the floor on this amendment? Give the floor to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir. I fully take note of the contribution made by the Attorney General in on the issue of trying to balance the rights, and no one is ostracized, as he has said. But the point that I'm trying to raise here, sir, a very important ministry here that looks after the interests of the villages. Because in most time, data and statistics coming out of this ministry challenges the traditional leadership into the number of their sons and daughters that are in jail all over Fiji. And most of it to do with this kind of a bill that we have here. And we take it as a challenge, the traditional leaders take it as a challenge to either visit, and we play our role effectively in trying to make the offenders understand they are part of the village and that they will never be ostracized as indicated. But again, the missing of the iTaukei affairs from this particular list That is the very reason for the motion, sir. All I'm trying to say, it helps the traditional leaders in carrying out their duties. Because the Turanikoro is there, the Roko is there, and from experience, I've encountered, sir, it leads to nowhere. Because if we go further than where we are now, we'll be taking the laws into our own hands. And that is not good, sir. All we are trying to say is once the iTaukei Affairs Ministry is listed here, the downstream effect of that is the Roko and the traditional leaders would play their role here. And I'm mindful of the fact, Mr. Chairman, sir, because at times traditional leaders have been challenged. What have you been doing? You're sitting there as a chief and you're doing nothing. You're helping to alleviate this problem that we have. And these are one of the things that we are asking. If that person resides in the village by exercising his right, being registered in the Wali Kambula, the traditional leaders needs to understand that they have a role to play in ensuring that person is a citizen that abides with the law of the land. Here, when we want to do that, we are limited, we are handicapped. But the Matangali that the offender belongs to needs to take charge of this, and they need to be accountable to the Vanua. Okay, we're looking after one of our own members here. He's been caught up in this, and all I ask is, what have you done? Because the social welfare people, the prisons people, they visit us again and we ask, have we continued to look after this person or he's another offender here? And he becomes and he repeats all this every now and again, and that is to make things worse. We have 200 houses in my village here. And the number of families and extended families that live in the 200 houses is more. Population is well over 1,000. So you can understand, sir, the picture that I'm trying to paint here is all the Vanua is the relevant ministry be there. It's an important agency. So when they play their role, we know we are abiding and we will be ensuring that we are within the law in whatever we will try and do to ensure that the offenders are taken note of and there will be not a repeat of the offense that has been done. Because it will bring disrepute, it will bring shame to the village community as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir.
I thank the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Honourable members who are at this stage, we've had the right of reply, so we will have to vote on this amendment. The Parliament will now vote on the amendment to Part 2, specified agencies, to be amended to include the Ministry of iTaukei Affairs. That is the amendment. We'll vote by acclamation. Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against say nay.
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 The nays have it.
Nay.
We move on.